One of the most profound errors people make in relationships, especially women who feel emotionally invested, is losing themselves in the identity of the other person. Now, this is not necessarily malicious, and it's often driven by a desire to connect, to love deeply, and to support. But when you surrender your personal ambitions, your routines, your friendships, and your values to revolve entirely around a partner, you effectively abandon the structure of your own identity. And here's the uncomfortable truth: when you do that, you become less valuable, not only to yourself, but also to the very person you're trying to keep. You must understand something foundational. People are drawn to strength. And strength does not come from dependence. It comes from autonomy. It comes from purpose. It comes from being engaged in something that stretches you, challenges you, and demands more of you than mere existence. When you establish a life of your own, what you're really doing is crafting a framework for meaning outside of romantic attachment that makes you more interesting, more independent, and ultimately far more desirable. Ask yourself, what are your goals beyond your relationship? Do you have a career that you're developing not just for income, but for the cultivation of your skills and your character? Are you reading books that challenge your mind? Are you taking care of your physical health, not just to look attractive, but to live with energy and competence? Do you have friendships that aren't conditional on your partner's presence? Are you pursuing a spiritual or philosophical grounding that helps you navigate the complexity of life with integrity? These aren't just hobbies or distractions, they are your foundation. When a person sees that you have a life of your own, one you're unwilling to abandon, one that gives you a sense of fulfillment regardless of your relationship status, they begin to view you through a lens of deep respect. You're no longer someone who needs them, you're someone who chooses them, and the moment someone realizes that you can be complete without them, the stakes shift. Now they must bring their best selves forward. Now they must earn your continued attention, and let's be very clear, this doesn't mean building a wall. It doesn't mean becoming distant or cold. It means you love more honestly, because you're not acting out of desperation. When you're anchored in a life you value, when you're pursuing meaning, you don't cling to someone out of fear of being alone. You connect from a place of strength. That kind of connection is mature, it's sustainable. And it's something that, quite frankly, is rare. People often think that devotion means sacrifice, and it does, but only when that sacrifice is balanced with self-respect. If you give everything away and keep nothing for yourself, you're not being generous. You're being careless with your soul, and if you don't value your soul, how can you expect someone else to? So cultivate your life, build it brick by brick, learn a skill, wake up early, push your boundaries. Travel if you can, read difficult books, surround yourself with people who elevate you, discover what gives you a sense of responsibility and pursue it with discipline. Then, when you enter a relationship or remain in one, you do so as a whole person. Not as a half looking to be completed, but as a complete individual willing to share the burden of life with another. That is how you become someone worth keeping. That is how you make someone afraid of losing you, by never being afraid of losing yourself. Telling the truth is not a convenient act. It's not always kind in the immediate sense, and it's certainly not always easy, but it is essential, because every time you withhold the truth, especially in a relationship, you betray not just the other person, but yourself. And that kind of betrayal accumulates. It starts small, a withheld opinion, a fake smile, a yes when you meant no. But over time, those compromises mutate into resentment, and resentment is poison. It eats away at love from the inside out. We live in a world that encourages harmony at all costs. Don't rock the boat, don't say what you think, don't upset anyone, but the truth is, when you silence your voice to maintain superficial peace, you invite a deeper kind of chaos. You may avoid conflict for a while, yes, but you're not solving anything. You're just burying the problem, until it resurfaces, often with more damage than if it had been confronted honestly in the first place. Now, speaking the truth doesn't mean being cruel. It doesn't mean unloading your frustrations in a flurry of emotion. That's not courage. That's just a lack of control. Speaking the truth means saying what is real, even when your voice trembles. It means articulating your boundaries without apologizing for having them. It means revealing what bothers you, what hurts you, what you need, not to manipulate, but to be known. Because here's the reality: if you never speak your truth, the person you're with never actually knows you. They know the version of you that is agreeable, pleasing, and conflict-averse. That version might be easier to live with in the short term, but it's a facade, and love cannot grow on a foundation of illusion. It requires something deeper, honest confrontation with who we are, even if it's messy. It's particularly important to tell the truth when it's uncomfortable, when it might cost you something. That's when it matters most. Because in that moment, you're choosing self-respect over approval, you're choosing depth over comfort, and that is the root of emotional maturity. If you're unhappy about something, and you don't say it because you're afraid he might leave, understand this: you're already diminishing yourself. You're teaching him, subtly, that your needs don't matter, that your silence can be bought with attention or affection, and the more you do that, the more you disappear, until one day you don't recognize yourself, and worse, he doesn't respect you. Now, will there be moments when your truth causes friction? Absolutely. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Conflict, when handled with care, is not a sign of dysfunction. It's a sign that two real people are interacting, not just performing for each other. Relationships that endure are not those without conflict. They're the ones where both people have the strength to bring their truths to the table and work through them with mutual respect. And when you speak the truth, you set a precedent. You show that you are not to be appeased but understood. You model honesty, and you give the other person permission to do the same. That kind of interaction is powerful. It's how intimacy is built, not on control or comfort, but on clarity. So speak up, even when it shakes the room. Say what you think, express your needs, hold your boundaries, not because it will always go well, but because it will always be right. That's how you develop a voice. And once you have a voice, you're no longer easily dismissed. You're no longer replaceable. You become someone who cannot be overlooked, because you are rooted in what is real, and that, fundamentally, is what makes someone afraid to lose you. The pursuit of self-improvement is not vanity, it is responsibility. It is the acknowledgement that your life and the way you show up in it matters deeply. Too often, people fall into the illusion that they are somehow done, that once they've found a partner or achieved a certain level of success, they can afford to stop growing. That is a dangerous mindset, because the moment you stop striving to become more than you are, you begin to decay. Improving yourself isn't about perfection. It's not about becoming some idealized image to win approval from others. It's about becoming someone you can genuinely respect when you're alone in the dark. Someone capable, someone disciplined, someone who has confronted their weaknesses and taken action rather than hiding behind excuses or blame. And here's the truth: a person who is committed to their own evolution is profoundly attractive, not because of their appearance alone, but because of what that commitment represents. It represents inner strength. It signals ambition, focus, and a refusal to settle. When you improve yourself relentlessly, honestly, you communicate that your standards are not up for negotiation. And that makes people take you seriously. It makes them consider very carefully the consequences of losing you. But improvement requires structure. You don't just stumble into growth, you pursue it. That means setting routines, creating goals, holding yourself accountable, and removing the parts of your life that are making you weak. Maybe you need to stop scrolling your phone for hours and start reading something difficult. Maybe you need to clean your room, fix your posture, or stop avoiding that conversation that keeps you up at night. Start small, but start now, because small changes, compounded over time, build immense momentum. Physical improvement matters, not because you need to look like a model, but because your body is the foundation of your being. Train it, fuel it well, move it with purpose. When you take care of your body, you send a message to your subconscious: I am worth protecting. I am not a victim. I am someone capable of discipline. That message radiates outward and people feel it. But don't stop at the body. Sharpen your mind, learn something new every week. Challenge your assumptions, watch lectures, take notes, develop opinions, because when you can speak clearly, when you can think critically, when you know what you're talking about, you become formidable. And formidable people are respected. They're not easily manipulated. They're not discarded without consequence. Emotional improvement is crucial too. Are you reactive or do you respond with intention? Do you take everything personally, or can you pause, assess, and act from a place of maturity? Emotional control doesn't mean suppression. It means mastery. It means knowing yourself so well that your feelings inform you without owning you. And throughout all of this, you must be relentless. Improvement is not a phase. It is a lifelong orientation. You will slip, you will falter, but you do not stop. Because the moment you stop, the gap between who you are and who you could be begins to widen again. And with it comes regret, resentment, and self-doubt. When you improve yourself relentlessly, something profound happens. Your presence changes. You walk into a room differently. You speak with more conviction. You're not desperate for validation because you've already earned your own respect. And that energy is magnetic. It's the kind of energy that makes someone stop and think, if I don't keep up, if I don't match their growth, I'm going to lose them. And they should think that, because a person who is constantly evolving is never truly static. They are always moving forward, and anyone who wants to stay in their life must either grow with them or get left behind. You teach people how to treat you. Whether you're conscious of it or not, every action you allow, every behavior you tolerate, every time you stay silent when something violates your values, you are instructing the world on what is acceptable. And if you have no standards, you will be treated accordingly, as someone without boundaries, without self-respect, and without direction. Setting clear, non-negotiable standards is not about being rigid or controlling. It is about defining the terms under which you are willing to engage with the world. In relationships, this is especially critical because a romantic partner is not just a companion, they are an influence. They shape your habits, your emotional climate, your world, and if you allow yourself to be drawn into a relationship without articulating your bottom lines, you will find yourself bending, then breaking, until you are a version of yourself you no longer recognize. People often confuse love with tolerance. They think being a good partner means being endlessly patient, forgiving, and agreeable. But let me be blunt. Allowing someone to disrespect you is not kindness. It's weakness masquerading as virtue, and people can sense it. If you don't stand up for yourself, someone else will decide what you deserve, and they'll base that decision on what you've accepted in the past. Now, what are non-negotiables? They are not preferences, they are not wish lists, they are foundational truth, core principles you will not abandon for anyone. Maybe it's honesty, maybe it's loyalty. Maybe it's the way you expect to be spoken to. Whatever they are, they must be articulated internally first, and then externally through your actions. If someone crosses those lines, your job is not to plead. It's not to argue or explain your worth over and over again. Your job is to enforce the boundary. That may mean walking away. That may mean saying no when it's inconvenient. That may mean risking discomfort, loneliness, or confrontation. But let me tell you something important. Temporary pain is a small price to pay for long-term self-respect. This is where most people falter. They are afraid of loss. They think, if I hold this standard, they'll leave. And yes, maybe they will. But if someone walks away because you won't lower your standards, they were never capable of meeting you at your level to begin with. That is not a loss, that is clarity. People respect those who respect themselves. It's as simple as that. If you have standards and you live by them, you become a fixed point in a chaotic world. You become trustworthy, not because you cater to everyone, but because your values are stable and non-negotiable. And stability breeds attraction. Stability breeds commitment. Stability makes someone think twice before risking the relationship. And these standards aren't just for others. They're for you, because every time you honor them, you reinforce your identity. You remind yourself of who you are and what you will not become. You begin to trust yourself, and self-trust is the cornerstone of confidence. Let me be clear, this isn't about arrogance, it's about alignment. When your actions align with your principles, your presence changes. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to beg. You simply are, and that kind of authenticity is rare. It's powerful, and it makes people understand on a visceral level that losing you would not just be sad. It would be costly, so set your standards, be bold about them, live them even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because in a world full of people trying to please everyone, the one who knows where they stand becomes impossible to ignore and very difficult to lose. Would you like the next key point expanded as well? There's a kind of fear that lurks beneath many unhealthy relationships, not the fear of conflict, not even the fear of loss, but the fear of being alone. And that fear drives people to stay in places they've outgrown, to accept behavior they shouldn't tolerate, to trade self-respect for the mere presence of another body in the room. But let me tell you something fundamental. If you are afraid of solitude, you are vulnerable to being controlled. Because the person who fears being alone will accept almost anything to avoid it, including the erosion of their identity. Solitude is not a punishment. Solitude is where you meet yourself. It's where you find out what you believe, what you value, and who you are without the noise of other people shaping your every move. If you've never taken time to sit with yourself, to be fully alone, not distracted, not numbed, not entertained, but alone with your own thoughts, you are, in a sense, a stranger to your own life. When you don't fear solitude, you become powerful. Because now, you're not looking for a relationship out of desperation. You're not seeking someone to fill a hole. You're not choosing from a place of lack. You're choosing from a place of clarity. And someone who chooses from clarity is someone who can walk away when necessary, not out of pride, but out of self-respect. Solitude teaches you to be whole. It teaches you that your value does not depend on who's texting you back, who's making plans with you, or who's giving you attention. It reminds you that you were a complete human being before they came, and you will remain one after they go, if they do. And this isn't just philosophy. It has psychological weight. The person who is comfortable being alone is harder to manipulate. Why? Because they can't be coerced with fear. They're not scared of silence. They're not driven by emotional dependency. And so they can hold the line when others try to push it. They can say no. They can wait. They can think. This is especially important in romantic relationships, where emotional enmeshment can disguise itself as intimacy. You think you're connecting deeply, when in reality, you're just clinging to someone because you haven't learned how to stand on your own. That's not love, that's attachment rooted in fear, and relationships built on fear inevitably rot from the inside. When you embrace solitude, you discover the richness of your own company. You find out what excites you. You uncover creative impulses, you develop self-discipline, you become a better thinker, and most importantly, you learn to enjoy your own mind, not as a constant critic, but as an ally. Now, this doesn't mean you shut people out. It doesn't mean you become cold or detached. What it means is that your connection to others becomes a choice, not a compulsion. You can love freely because you're not afraid of what will happen if it ends. You can give generously because you're not giving from a place of emptiness. You're not needing someone to complete you. You're inviting them to walk beside you. And here's the paradox. The less afraid you are of being alone, the less likely you are to end up alone. Because people gravitate toward those who don't need them for validation. There's something quietly magnetic about someone who is content on their own. They don't chase, they don't beg, they don't perform. They simply are. And in that presence, others begin to realize, this person is not afraid to leave if I don't show up fully. And that realization, that calm, grounded capacity for solitude, is what makes someone truly afraid to lose you. If there's one principle that undergirds all others in relationships and in life, it is this: make yourself valuable. Not just superficially, not just strategically, but fundamentally. This is not about manipulation. It's not about tactics to keep someone around. It's about becoming a person whose presence is inherently meaningful, someone whose departure would be felt as a genuine loss, not because of attachment, but because of substance. What does it mean to be valuable? It means that your existence contributes something real, that you bring strength, stability, insight, courage, warmth, something that elevates the dynamic between you and the people around you. You become someone who listens deeply, speaks honestly, and acts with integrity. You cultivate skills, you take responsibility, you learn how to carry the weight of your own life, and then, when appropriate, you help others carry theirs. That's not an easy path. It demands discipline. It requires that you stop asking, "What do I get?" and start asking, "What do I bring?" Because relationships are not sustained by need alone. They are sustained by mutual contribution. And if you want someone to fear losing you, not in a toxic, manipulative way, but in a deep, existential way, then you must offer something that cannot be easily replaced. We live in a culture that undervalues virtue and overvalues image. People want to be seen as successful, attractive, desirable, but few want to do the hard work of becoming useful, of becoming trustworthy, of becoming someone who can be relied on in a crisis. But that's what value truly is, not how much attention you can draw, but how much order you can bring to chaos. To be valuable, you must first confront your potential. That means waking up to the fact that you could be more than you are right now. You could be wiser, stronger, more articulate, more disciplined, more generous, and then, instead of sitting in envy or resentment, you make the decision to pursue that potential relentlessly. That pursuit alone makes you rare, because most people don't do it. Most people choose comfort over growth, distraction over mastery. But if you commit to growth, you begin to separate yourself from the crowd, not arrogantly, but meaningfully. Being valuable also means developing your character. Are you honest when it costs you? Are you kind when it's inconvenient? Can you be counted on even when no one is watching? These are the traits that build trust, and trust is the currency of lasting connection. Anyone can be liked, but not everyone can be trusted, and once you are trusted, your value multiplies. This also means knowing your worth without having to announce it. When you're truly valuable, you don't have to beg, chase, or convince someone to stay. You don't have to perform to keep their interest. You simply exist in your fullness, and the right people recognize it. The wrong ones don't, and that's their loss, not yours. It's important to understand that becoming valuable is not a one-time event. It's a lifelong process. You build it every day through your choices, your habits, your conversations, your goals, and over time, that value becomes self-evident. You become someone who makes things better, someone whose presence adds clarity, calm, and meaning. And here's the meta-truth: when you make yourself valuable, you never need to make someone afraid of losing you. The fear arises naturally, not from manipulation, but from recognition, because people intuitively understand what's rare and they guard it. They recognize what uplifts them and they fight to keep it. When you embody value, you don't have to demand anything. You become the standard, and in a world full of noise, that kind of presence speaks louder than words ever could.